All right, good evening. It is 6:25. Let's call this Community Development Advisory Committee meeting to order. Let's start out first with our roll call, and we'll start with Deborah.
Thank you, Deborah Hogan, mayoral appointee.
Thank you.
Eileen Hughes, District 2.
John Brunza, mayoral appointee.
Rebecca Rathmouth or Rob Kavanaugh appointment.
That's District 3, by the way.
Kenya Middleton, ex officio.
Marianne Callahan, mayoral appointee.
Michelle O'Loughlin, at-large appointee.
Marilyn Austin, 6th District.
And I'm the chair, Justin McGregor, 7th District. Oh, sorry. You're not in one of the regular seats.
I didn't want to take anybody's seat, so it's okay. I'm okay right here.
Okay.
Rebecca Porter, 1st District.
Thank you, Rebecca. Sorry about that. All right. First, I want to bring up the minutes from the last meeting. Does anyone see anything that needs to be changed on said meeting minutes? If not, do we have a
I'll make a motion
Motion?
to approve the minutes of April 3rd, 2024.
do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Seeing no nays, no? Okay, good. Unanimously accepted. All right, that brings us to our continuing discussion of fiscal year 50 budget and what we were working on last time. But before we start that, Mary Ann and myself met with the mayor on Monday to discuss the $20,000 minimum and the reasoning behind that. It was very insightful. It was a 45-minute meeting roughly, almost an hour. In that discussion, they were talking about how past where we have given out money in increments of 5,000 or 7,000 or 2,500 or whatever it may be, just to get everybody on the board, where we tried to throw the money out evenly so everyone got a piece of that. The amount of hours that Stephen in the office had to do to get the paperwork, get the receipts, get the things back so that they could be reimbursed for that money was extensive. And a lot of that money often wasn't used. And they thought if we focused on grant sizes that where we have maybe less of them, but more funding and more impact with them, that it's an opportunity for us to make a bigger impact in the city of Binghamton. Did I do a good paraphrasing basically of what the mayor's position was on that? Do you have anything you would like to add?
He did indicate to us that there, and excuse me, my mouth is full. You have to pay attention when you've got pizza and a meeting going on at the same time. He did indicate to us that there are certain things that he would like to have funded, as Fairview is one of them, Rebecca, which is probably good news. And those amounts may be different, but what we decided, or what we had talked about with the mayor's office, is that $20,000 should be kind of like the target that we use, that would be the minimum and maximum at the same time, to make our deliberations a little easier. Is that?
That's what I took away from his.
So I think we have the list of the things that are sort of baked in, which may not be the 20,000. We should have those figures, because he gave us some of them.
Yeah.
And what we should do is then look at what we've got left over after those things are taken out of the mix, and then make our deliberations from there.
Correct.
Okay.
His goal is to basically start a new norm on what they apply for, what the impact of this money will be, and what his objectives were overall, both within the funding streams we've got here on the screen behind me, and the portion that is city budget for helping with code enforcement, housing planning, park rangers. He did mention that the police have more than enough funding reserves and avenues of funding that we shouldn't be using CBG funding for the police department this year. He did throw his support behind the Boys and Girls Clubs, the Attain backpack program, I think that's CARES, and Fairview.
Did he give you?
He didn't. Did we get that in an email? 15. I don't know if it was 5,500 or 55,000. He just kept saying 55.
Well, I do have the numbers up there from last year. So if you think those are the numbers he was talking about, we can plug the ones that he told you in.
And he felt that blight removal was going to be a big need this time. So whatever our line is that we had 300,000 plus last year, if we could increase that, we should. Yeah, Anzaroot Properties, they're gonna try to spin the ones they can back out. Some be rehabilitated and some are just going to need to be.
I do want to tell you this, for practical purposes, there's kind of a soft limit to the amount of demolitions you can do. Due to the nature of CDBG funding. CDBG funding, a certain percentage must go to low income people, households, whatever. Pretty much everything we do does that other than salaries like admin and planning, those code counts, BLDC counts. But that leaves this sort of vague soft cap amount for things that are like if we were paying the Section 108 loan back, which we're done with. Demolitions and blight that are spot removal. That being said, and I've talked to the mayor about this, you can qualify demolitions for low mod purposes if there's a planned additional usage for that. So for example, if you bought some houses next to a park to demolish to expand the park, that it qualifies under low income. That will qualify as a low income demolition and is not subject to that sort of soft cap. But generally, most of our demolitions now are just, we demo them, they become that side lot program thing. We don't have any income requirements for purchasing. But because of that, there's a practical limit. So don't try to put more than, I would say, easily $500,000 in there. It's beyond that will be extreme.
I wrote down 300,000 plus. I didn't. Oh, okay. Very good.
Okay.
That's why
so-
there's two of us. So we get every.
All right.
aspect of
So just want to make sure, what did he say about Attain Lab?
The rent.
Just the rent alone? So I think that's 8760. The Boys and Girls Club, how much for each one of the 3 programs? Oh, the current ones? Does he want to boost it up then?
We mentioned the 7 that Mary Beth had mentioned in the email.
Yeah.
So that was.
Whatever that money
based on-
was, he
that
was
based
okay
on
with that.
This year's figure, wasn't it?
So I guess it's the number they're asking for then?
Yeah.
26,125?
Because that was our question. With that amount, could they possibly squeeze in a few more kids?
Okay. I did send the email to Boys and Girls Club. They responded. I sent an email to TTLP as well. They did
didn't
not
answer?
respond yet.
Interesting.
I had conversations with them. It was not a question. They had trouble. They had difficulty answering the question. I can tell you that. They were supposed to send an email, but they haven't. The question was whether they should get whether they would prefer CDBG or ESG funding. On a practical purpose, I can tell you this from a grant writing perspective. Anytime you hear that, you're going to immediately go and want to start hedging your bets because if you say it, you feel like you're turning a tap off for the other grant. So that would be my guess as to why they had trouble answering it. But they were supposed to provide something. They just haven't.
Oh, wow. Well, it leaves us to
I'll-
decide then, huh? Oh, Deb?
Deborah.
Justin, Marianne, could you please clarify the position regarding the 3 Boys and Girls Club
Figures?
limits, figures, thank you, that he was speaking of? Because I have a concern regarding the summer program.
He said that it was the city of Binghamton's stance to fully fund the Boys and Girls Club, that it's been basically baked into our funding, and that he believed it should continue that way. Is that
Yeah, we
more or
didn't-
less word
yeah,
for word what
we
he
didn't
said?
talk about specific figures. That may be something we can decide.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for the clarification.
There were very few figures except support for what they requested.
It was more of a conversation of who, not necessarily the amount.
Correct.
Priorities, and the figures that we did get were under that $20,000, so they were the,
Which completely,
Outlier.
when it gets, I was like, that completely goes against the whole concept of us being here to ask about the $20,000 floor. We're saying, let's just do the rent for one of them.
oh, we were there for so much more though.
I know we were.
So the CARES also, did he say how much for CARES or continuing the program at existing levels?
15,000.
15,000? No, but they will be getting an application email from me tomorrow morning.
I don't understand that precedent of if they don't apply and then they just get it anyway and they apply afterwards. So did he have anything to say about that?
Sorry. He said that those things in his mind were grandfathered in. And what we took exception to is the fact that those kinds of things should be made very clear to this committee before we even begin our deliberations. And I think that that's something that we'll want to go back and talk to the mayor's office about, not leaving us hanging like that. And if they are allowed under the HUD regulations is another problem. So I left with a couple of questions regarding those issues, but that's what we were told.
Yeah, and it basically was like, oh, there'd be an email application and filed as soon as we say we're gonna give them money or whatever. And that left a bad taste in my mouth because they didn't apply. But he said that these understaffed organizations, sometimes the paperwork falls through the cracks. But it's a grant. There needs to be some paperwork.
And these are issues I think that we need to clarify as we go into the next session this fall. And the other thing that we need to clarify is something that we've been dealing with a long time on this committee is we need to tell people that just because you've been getting money, and this is another thing that has to be discussed as far as the grandfathered in people is, will you continue to get that money, especially with the new paradigm shifts in? So we've got a lot of work that we need to do to make our process more transparent and clarify what it is we're doing. And we will.
I just want to put in the record that Ebony has showed up,
And Jordan?
and Jordan. Hi, Jordan. Jordan did text me saying she was running late. But pistachio cake, it's cooling now. It will be frosted.
That's going into the official record too.
I was 4 minutes late because of that cake. All right, and homemade frosting.
All right, so I've updated the spreadsheet with those sort of the mayor's numbers and marked them in gray. So we'll just be working around that unless you guys want to say change those numbers, but that's up to you.
Justin,
Yes,
and just for additional clarification, the park rangers, is that, did he comment on that? Was that some of those, the money from the
He
police
supports
that
funding the park rangers
from us or from?
From us.
Okay,
from us.
okay, I didn't know whether that was that.
Yeah, that was one of the sets.
Okay,
But no figures were given.
Yeah, no figure. He didn't
Under-
tell us what. He just said, he knows there's pushback on salaries, but he does support salaries in code enforcement, housing planning, and the park rangers. I'm not sure park rangers fall into that.
I
Okay.
mean, park rangers itself falls on, it's a salary. It is salaries, but it's a service reimbursable one after the fact. It counts as a service as
Okay.
opposed to code, which does not count as a service.
Okay, thank you. And my note here is the ESG lines are
Deb's got
good.
it.
Oh, sorry, Deborah.
Justin and Steve, just for clarification, I went back into our notes and in 2022, 4 park rangers were funded to the tune of $10,200. So that was a previous. Now, I went through the papers and the 23-24, of course, didn't have a number next to it, but it's been funded in 2021 at 10,000 for 3 park rangers. And those are traditionally Sherry Lindsay on the north side and Columbus Park in Center City.
So we funded in 2022, but not 2023?
Right, because that's
Fiscal
where
year
we are.
49? Not fif-
I don't know, off the top of my head.
Okay. Thank you for looking that up. All right, so what do we think about these numbers and what we've said to you about the mayor?
You're over cap.
We're over cap.
Yeah, with the mayor's numbers plugged in, you're definitely over cap. By about 20,000.
By what?
By 20,000.
By 20,000.
So we're $20,000 over. We were under. We were all excited last time because we were under.
What about revisiting literacy volunteers of Room Tioga, the no-show?
I know I had spoken in favor of them, but, in light of what we're charged with now, I think that because they didn't show up, that it should be reduced. So that would give us 10. But, but then as I think more too, it is really annoying to think that we're taking something away from that program. I don't know, but CARES didn't come either. Because they didn't apply. But I would be willing to take that 10,000 off. If that's what other people think.
So over the $20,000 threshold, we have the Boys and Girls Club summer program fee at $26,125. That's it, right? Fairview Recovery in at 55,000. Basically, that's where our hole was blown. Because we had nothing in there because they had not applied before, and now we have 55,000 in there, correct?
Justin,
Yes.
quick question. I understand the mayor is supporting the Boys and Girls Club, but if I understood you correctly, he didn't mention an amount. And we're looking at $50,000 for a teen program. That's not to say we're not, could that be reduced? It's still supporting it, but right now, if I'm seeing this correctly, the Boys and Girls Club is almost $100,000, a third of our overall budget.
Well, that's what we're here for, to discuss that.
I would recommend a reduction. We're still supporting
Reduction
it
for
as-
Boys and Girls Club, Eileen says. All right, Deborah?
Question and concern I've had for this agency, especially regarding the summer program, it's at 100%. And it has been at 100%. And we've always tried, and this goes, Marianne was with me back in the yonder years, that you always tried to have the agencies not depend on you year after year, and especially for 100%. I do know that this is a project for the 4th floor, but that's where I have a concern on. Steve, and a question for you, going to the teen center, were the funds completely used? Can you go back a year if they weren't to help give us some wiggle room here?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head if they spent all their money. Actually, maybe I can, hold on.
Well, that's being looked up. I'll also point out the fact that, you know, the summer program, well, we do hear that it's a good program. That's the only one that they're asking for more than last year. The other two, the teen program and the teen center are asking for what appears to be the same amount as last year. Summer program is they're looking to expand, so maybe that could be a way that we could decrease a little bit.
What if we looked at the full funding for Fairview as well? 55, that's,
I'm open to that as well.
I mean, if we took a little from maybe the Boys and Girls Club and a little from Fairview to add up to 20,000, we'd be where we needed to be, wouldn't we? And they're getting something.
You know, and I know that we're over budget, but I would like to find 3,000 to give action for older persons in even 20, you know. We seem to be shorting them, even though they stand out to a lot of people in this body
Yes,
as
of course.
providing really good service. And I'd hate to see that.
Which was what?
So Deb, it looks like for the after hours program, they left 8,700 on the table last year, or the last full year, which was a couple of years ago. They're still in the middle of 49, so you can't judge them for that. But 48, they left 8,700 on the table.
Quick question, and just as a reminder and refresher for our new members, does that go back in the pot or is that usable as a go back?
Yes. So basically what happens is the budget has a line called human services, and we create purchase orders based off of individual agreements that are approved by city council and the mayor's office. They will tap into that, but if they don't use all that money, once the PO is released, any leftover funds go back into that year's human services line. We could dip into it for future things, and I'm supposed to meet with the mayor tomorrow about looking at some older budget things for consolidations to address timeliness issues. And we can go back and look at some of those other unspent funds. The difficulty is with older human service lines, I strongly encourage them not to be used for service programming simply because every year we're at the service cap exactly. So I would be worried if we ever use old service money for service funding and all the service agencies spent their money correctly, in which case then the city taxpayer has to pay back HUD whatever goes over that 15%.
So that 8,000 was the teen program, correct? That's what Mary Ann's question just was. That they didn't spend a couple years ago. Okay. Fiscal 48. All right. So we're currently in 50. The numbers that we're currently in 49. So we don't have any numbers showing how much is left over from 49, but the last year that we have a full number is 40.
I mean, I can show you what they've spent so far in 49, but they still have until end of August to spend the funds. So I couldn't tell you if they're going to or not.
Right. Okay. So would you like to see a reduction in those numbers? John, is that what you were saying?
Yeah, you know, I think that that's fair, especially given the 8 and change that they didn't spend on the teen center or the teen program. I think that would be a good place to reduce.
What kind of number are you thinking?
Almost the exact amount that they didn't spend 2 years ago. I think that would send a message.
So $8,750? Isn't that what it was? $8,742.
We reduce it by 10,000 instead of 50, make it 40 and see where we go.
Any support for 10? I see nods. 10. Oh,
We still thinking it was a part of us.
all right.
I'm open to that. Yes.
We are all in favor of that. So 40,000. And now the summer program is the one where we're paying for the each individual kid joining, right? It's the memberships. So their increase is having extra people, extra kids. Is that what
Yeah.
she said?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
So that was for 7 more?
seven.
7
more.
more.
I believe that's what the email said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
So wait, 20. $6,125 divided by $875 a kid. Okay. So now we are how much over?
10.
10? We're still $10,000 and 10,035.
Reiterate that it's never safe to do it
being
right
near
at the cap.
Yeah.
Does,
So Mary Ann's other
Okay.
suggestion was lowering Fairview, considering they didn't even apply.
well, considering it's a very large number.
And
you
it's a
know,
huge
as
number.
opposed to our $20,000 goal or our target. And it's, you know,
So what would you suggest for Fairview?
if we do 10, then we're done. And then we're, you know, we're where we need to be as far as,
So lower it by $10,000? Is that what you're?
well, I mean, let's have some discussion on this, but you know,
Any discussion on that?
Well, they did not apply this year, correct?
Correct.
So I don't think they should get. I really,
Yeah, that is one of his priorities.
right,
they
but
may
it,
have,
but he
they may
didn't,
have been led to believe that they didn't have to fund, to be very fair.
I'm sorry, what?
They may have been led to believe that they didn't because they are grandfathered in. They may have been led to believe that they didn't, you know, need to do the
Right.
application. So, you know, to be fair, that's the impression that I got when we talked to the mayor. That they were grandfathered in.
Same as the CARES.
Yeah. So and this is where I'm talking about better communication and transparency.
Yeah. Well, I would favor a reduction in that 55,000.
Okay, 55,000 down, we're reducing it by 10. Is that our suggestion? And I see a nod, a yes, a nod, and a couple more nods. I'm looking up at Deborah. She's saying 5,000? Sorry,
5 for right now, just to see where our numbers are.
okay. So let's reduce it to 50,000 to get our numbers closer to where we need to be.
And then are you gonna take the literacy volunteers? The adult literacy education program, you're gonna take that out?
There's one organization that I support that has traditionally asked for $10,000 each time and asked for 20 this time. And I'm not sure, or actually. Say what? Yeah. I love it too. It's one of my favorite things. I know we didn't. But we have in for the full 20. You want in for the full 20? Okay.
I think it's a good program too, but I think it's a matter of priorities and I don't know if we should sacrifice other programs. Do they have other funding? I gotta look up.
I think I'd like to fund the makerspace. you can't ignore the community support that came here either.
Right.
You know, and so that weighs a lot with me as well. People taking their time out of their day, not just the people who are getting the money and part of the organization, but people who use it. And
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree. I think we should fund the makerspace as well. I like the fact that it gives people the opportunity to work with their hands, even if necessarily like hand reading and writing isn't their strong suit. It gives people the chance to work with their hands, maybe develop a new trade or a new craft or something like that, a new hobby. I think we should fund it. It helps with the abstract thinking, quality of life. I think we should fund it.
Okay.
Like if it's not gonna be Boys and Girls Club, it almost has to be Fairview. Like I just said if it's not gonna be the Boys and Girls Club as far as reductions further, then it feels like it almost has to be that Fairview.
Yeah.
We're still $5,035 over.
$35.
And we don't want to be at the line to begin with, so.
I don't know if I'm allowed to ask this question. This is Rebecca. About Fairview, because I do believe that line item is my salary. I do not make 55,000. So I'm just curious of how much is dedicated towards salary versus what is being used for what else, because to my understanding, I'm the only person receiving my salary from CDBG funding.
I just want to chime in on that question. I'm not sure if they know that, but maybe in the packet and your information, they should tell
A breakdown.
exactly what the breakdown.
they didn't apply this year.
Oh, that's right. They didn't apply this year. So yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You might be getting a raise.
I
Joe.
definitely don't make $55,000.
You might be getting a raise. Okay.
Nothing. I'll talk later.
Here's the budget for this year.
Okay.
Salary intensive case manager out of the 55 was almost 38,000. Benefits, almost 9, and then mileage, telephone, and then an additional $6,000 in administration.
Okay. So yes, it is so I will remove myself from the discussion.
Steve, that second line is 8899.
8899.
I mean, so that would put salary plus benefits at 46,768.
Right, an auto calculator.
That's a good idea.
Ooh. She was talking about maybe just doing the salaries. Salary plus benefits. Yeah, it's 46,768.
Was it, and it's 50 that puts us at $5,000 or 50 that puts us at 10?
50 puts us at $5,000 short or over still.
Okay. I
So
mean, if we shave down to 46,768, or, well, I mean, we can round that out.
Can we just give Rebecca her salary and keep it pushing on this one?
I mean, there's funding based salary certainly has precedent. It gets us closer. And it's still one of the higher funded requests. I mean, even though it wasn't a request.
I tend to agree for the salary and benefits. I mean, especially going back, if we put the number in there, the exact number, it kind of sends a message that we're not cutting arbitrarily. We have a thought process here. You know, that brings us down a good amount.
Mind you, that is the salaries only for this year. Next year, salaries plus benefits may change.
So 46,768, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, round it up.
Round it up, 47,000, or round it down to 45?
I say go down to 45.
I-
45 is still healthy.
I certainly tend to agree with you on that, people who didn't apply, you're out of luck. But along the same lines, if the mayor has his priorities and he's gonna come in with a hatchet,
Yeah.
Hey, John, is your mic on? No.
Well, maybe the mayor should come and sit with us at a meeting. Like tonight. I mean, I don't know.
So,
It's something for next
at
year.
least that would get us closer so that we know that he's doing a little bit less slashing to the things that we want,
So
if that makes
at
sense.
45, you're
If-
saying?
Yeah, we're,
I think 45.
1, 2, 45, 45.
Yeah.
45.
Yeah.
Rebecca?
Can you? How's, okay. I mean, I'm inclined to round up to 47 just to cover the base salary and see where else we can shave, but I don't think that's a hill I will necessarily die on.
Okay. Ebony?
Thank
Would you like to see us at 45 or 47 or a different number altogether?
I mean, so it's my understanding that the numbers in gray are kind of already requested. So,
He said that had been priorities that he and city council had previously agreed on, and that they were basically grandfathered in. Past city
Good point.
councils.
We have a different city council, so I'm not sure that necessarily comes into full play.
So,
well, I'll abstain.
you'll abstain?
Yeah, thank you.
Deborah?
Who's with the mics?
What is going on with the mics? Yeah. They asked for 90,581. We've recommended so far 20,000.
The reason I'm saying that is I went back to the application, and one of the things, not only this presentation cycle, but past, is the board that they have and the treasurer, they seem to be very dogged in reaching out for other grants. And my thought is, when I'm looking at their application, their request is from the city of Binghamton, which we're going to be nowhere as close, was 58.2%. Because this is not in the quote unquote gray targeted area, could we look at doing that $5,000 lower just to see where we are? Because I think that gets us to our cap.
So instead of taking the $5,000 from Fairview, taking the additional $5,000 from NOMA?
Do we need to do both fives to be under the cap?
No. We only need 1 5 to get us just a hair under.
Steve wanted 15%.
Yeah, but he wanted a bigger gap. If we wanted to get to our gap, I think we need both fives. There's a 15.2% is the cap, right? 15 is a cap, so 15.2 is that 23,850, right? Yeah. So we're $5,035 away from the so that the 5,000 from either one of those puts us below that 23,850.
I have a potential other solution and I'm gonna reiterate, sounds like I hate literacy. I don't. I don't hate literacy. However, there's a number of reasons why I think that we could find the money there. They didn't show up. We've established that. It's not a mayor priority. It's not like they received funding last year that they're relying on this year. You know, we're really throwing them a bone with the 10,000, and that's 10,000 is below the mayor's limit, so it's likely to be axed anyway. I think that's 10,000 that could solve some of our problems that we're discussing right now if we take the 10,000 out of line 20. Can we see what that looks like, Steve?
Yep.
I second that.
All of a sudden I can smell the cake. That puts us at $318,885 or roughly 4,900 and whatever dollars, $15. $45, sorry, from our goal or below our goal. Below. Yeah, we're 14.8% of the cap and you wanted us to keep it below 15, right? So that puts us in the sweet spot without severely slashing any programs. That's not touching NOMA. NOMA's still at our original amount of 20,000 that we'd recommended previously.
That's good. Don't look back. Don't look back. That's good.
Don't look back.
Don't look back.
Don't look back, as Mary Ann is saying. We want to move on to another screen.
Yeah, let's move on.
Move
I'm
on.
good with moving on.
Okay. ESG is the one that we thought was pretty good looking last time, wasn't it?
Well, we were waiting for Rebecca, really, because Rebecca,
Because this is your sweet spot.
but before Rebecca speaks, may I make a point? And I think this is very important for all of us to do, but both with the people that appointed us and as a group, is that we tell the powers that be what this process was, what our thinking was in this transitional year, because now we're being asked to do things a little differently, so that our recommendations are really the best of all possible worlds in this transition period. And once more clarification comes out, agencies come in better informed about what their options are, and we know what priorities city council or the mayor has, it's going to make next year's process a little easier. But we need to tell our people that we're reporting to why we did what we did, and hopefully they will agree.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to say something too. You guys can all reach out to me too, because it's my job, even though I'm here just answering emails and I'm listening, but because I can't really say anything, but I'm here to report back to city council. So that's what I'm really here for. So if there is like anything that you can think of, when we have our next business meeting, I have to like give a report back. So if there's anything you can think of, you can call me, contact me, and just let me know so that way I can bring it back to them because that's my job to do that. So
Thank you.
even though I can't vote on anything anymore.
Rebecca.
So, and I know that I sent this via email. Again, brevity, not my strong suit when it comes to sending a lot of words. But I just try to add as much context as possible, specifically when I look at TTLP from a HUD perspective back in 2012, when I mentioned their eligibility to receive funds through the Emergency Solutions Grant. They are no longer technically eligible. That eligibility was changed in 2012, so more than a decade ago. And it removed funding in this emergency shelter and street outreach bucket from being accessed by transitional housing programs, specifically because transitional housing programs don't provide the immediate crisis service that this bucket is intended to serve, like emergency shelter and street outreach programs. This is not new for Catholic Charities. I'm not at all necessarily speaking to the merit of the program, but the opportunity to access and utilize those crisis services. We've seen upwards of 500% increases in unsheltered homelessness in the same time frame within the city of Binghamton. So emergency shelter, street outreach, I mean, the increases that we've seen in this same time frame really, I think, indicate the need to prioritize the crisis options. And so I want to just propose numbers if I could. They don't veer too far away from the COC recommendations, and they take into account base salaries for the emergency shelter and street outreach programs. They don't zero out TTLP because, Steve, I get it. You do make a good point that if we don't fund them at all, they can never access it again. That's fair, but they've known for over a decade now that we recommended specifically that they diversify. I'm sorry, when I say we, the COC, the Continuum of Care, recommended very clearly and specifically back in 2017, I sent that correspondence that they diversify their funding because of this eligibility change. As far as I can tell, they've only increased their requests. They have an incredible funding arm as Catholic Charities of Broome County. They have development campaigns. They're doing fundraising every year. And this should not be, this is the only funding stream that emergency shelters and street outreach can access. The only HUD kind of broad funding stream that is consistent. And I just think that's worth taking into account. Any thoughts or questions before I kind of run down
That's
some
why we waited
recommendations?
for you. Last week, we waited for you for this.
We push it aside.
Appreciate you.
My only question though is we're not funding them at all on the other side. We left it blank.
That was for a different program, wasn't it?
Is it a different program?
That was a different
Thought
program.
it said-
They applied for human services
Flip
under,
back to the screen
for a whole different program.
project, TTLP.
Yeah, I think Steve reached out to them and said that he asked them which one that they want. He said, yeah,
Okay.
if they wanted CBG or if they wanted.
And they could not answer, they had difficulty answering that question.
I'll add that, according to their application, they have $22 million. Which is, they're asking for 55,000, which is a drop in the bucket. If they want it so bad, they can fund it. We don't have to take away from these other programs. So I agree. And I'm looking forward to hearing Rebecca's numbers.
Yeah.
I'm ready for your number. Sorry.
They do.
Okay.
I just wanted to go on record and say once again that that is my employer, so I can't really vote on anything. However, like John said, that they do have a $22 million budget. And for those of you that missed the news the other day, they also just donated $1 million to another nonprofit agency. I can't remember off the top of my head which one it was, but I watched it while I was at work at Catholic Charities about how they donated $1 million. So I agree with Rebecca that maybe they don't need all the funding that they think they might need. I'm sure it wasn't the TTLP that donated it, but it was still Catholic Charities as a whole.
Okay.
Okay, so I have kind of two proposals. So the first one would be, and I'll save TTLP for last, but just looking at this base salary line for ACBC, that 2,800 or 20,800. For outreach ministries, 12,060, VOA, 10,400.
Can you slow down so Steven's putting those numbers in?
Oh, sorry, Steve. YWCA street outreach, 15,600. For YWCA is the emergency housing program in Southside Manor. I kept those at the COC recommendation. That would leave 8483 for TTLP, so it doesn't zero them out. If we want to reduce TTLP further, I do think that these street outreach programs are between ACBC, or the street outreach programs are really the ones providing the most immediate kind of unmet need. So if the group prefers to reduce it further than 8483, I think we can funnel that into street outreach or ACBC. With ACBC in particular, they are the only warming center that does not require, so most of our emergency shelters, all of them require a per diem payment. So even though an individual is unhoused and very likely at zero income, they still have to be eligible for DSS to actually access a bed, because otherwise they can't pay for that bed. It's really an unfortunate system that has been established that way. ACBC is the only one where they're not required to, they can go in, they may be sanctioned from DSS. They may have had other challenges at other shelters, but ACBC is the one that provides the immediate, you come in, you have the support, you have the cot. So I
What
think
would-
that's the worth considering.
If we do that, what would you
Test,
recommend?
test, test.
I think if we, it really depends on how much the group is okay with reducing TTLP. So I mean, 2,800 plus 8483 is still going to leave ACBC at 10 grand under their request. I mean, it would put them at 29,283. If we zero out Catholic Charities, if we don't want to do that, then we leave a couple hundred for Catholic Charities. And I'm sorry, I didn't bring a very specific number recommendation on that one besides context. I don't think we're bound to that. I think it's a helpful baseline. Yeah, I think it's a helpful baseline. For example, the COC's recommendation for the YWCA is lines 8 and 9. The request for the 15,600 for their street outreach program, I also think is fair. Outreach at 12, outreach ministries at 12,060. Yeah, I think if we're funneling it anywhere, I think it should go to ACBC. Sorry.
I'm in support of that. I don't know what the rest of the group thinks, but I am in support of reducing the TTLP. And I think that that's good reasoning to give it to ACBC.
I agree with that. I know I'm over by ACBC frequently filling up those, like the neighborhood blessing boxes and like those little pantries over there. And I'm over there frequently and there's always a line. There's always people waiting to go in. And then when they stop and they see me like filling up the boxes, like they come right over and help and they tell me about like what kind of led them to being in a shelter. And it could literally be any of us for some of these people. Some of them do have drug problems, don't get me wrong. Some of them are just really are on hard times. And this is the only place that they can go.
I'm struggling with zeroing out the TTLP.
I don't think we should zero it out. I think we should cut it, but I don't think we should zero it out.
Okay.
Once you lose that grandfather status, you're out permanently. And
Especially if they understand, like Steve had reached out to them and they couldn't really answer. But I think if this is the year they see they get some reduction and know that they have to understand that things have changed and they have to know where they're going to be getting their funding from for next time. But I don't want to see it go to zero.
I think if we give them some money and then indicate to them, as Rebecca said, that they've known this for a very long time. And maybe we didn't really understand what was going on, but we do now. And I think that that's fair. We keep them in the loop, but we let them know that, yeah, they're,
Okay.
I think that's so the only question is, what's the amount? I mean, it basically will be a token amount anyway.
$1,543.
To give the other, to give the
Just
rest.
taking the COC recommendation and chopping 10 grand off it. Just so they say, hey, wait. Or we go with the base salary number, 2,182. Just so they're gonna be like, oh. With the CDAC wants you to
Oh.
make up your mind and know where you want to be from here on out.
If anybody is, I mean, feel free to correct my calculations as I'm doing them on the fly here, but 1543 would leave us if we funded ACBC at 27,740 is what we could do if we bumped TTLP to 1543. Is that inaccurate? 27,740 for ACBC, 1543. Why don't I just stop talking and do my own calculating?
What is the ACBC recommendation?
Sorry, I just zeroed it out.
6,9. That would be what, 26?
27,740 for ACBC.
Yep.
1543 for TTLP. 12,060 for outreach ministries. 10,400 for VOA. 11,960 for YWCA. 17,897 for YWCA and 15,600. That 97,200 total.
I like those numbers. Anybody else? Any opinions?
Steve, just a quick, can you please take away the notes to make the screen bigger for me, please?
Does that
Yep,
help?
that's better. Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody have any real objections? to-
Does anyone have any objections to these numbers? I think I see thumbs up. I see some thumbs up, thumbs up.
Okay.
Michelle?
It's okay. I struggle with the TTLP. I hope that they have the understanding of why it was done the way it was.
I mean, when the CDAC reaches back out to you through the city for clarification and you can't answer, we're gonna send a message. Right? Especially with the size of the budget of Catholic Charities. That's the part that,
But they have a lot of programs at Catholic Charities.
I know they do, but they also have a lot of funding streams.
Mhm.
And I know how big the check was I wrote this year, so.
Okay.
All right. Anybody? Next
Deborah.
screen, or do we want any other discussion on this one? Deborah, anybody?
Bucking the trend, the TTLP program. This is something that came through to us with the COC since my time, 2016, 17 possibly, with a recommendation. Now, this committee, with this budget before us, gave that recommendation, but with a note. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe the target group of teens fits into the other categories. I could be wrong.
So youth can be served in emergency shelter and street outreach programming as well. That age cohort is typically 18 to 24. The YWCA does serve 16 and 17-year-olds. So that 16 and 17-year-old cohort is somewhat of the gap, but they are being served by shelter otherwise. I think if TTLP had provided consistently a breakdown of those age cohorts and spoke to that difference, it would be relevant, but they are being served elsewhere. And again, it's not a crisis program. There's a lengthy application process for TTLP, which again, one of the reasons why it doesn't quite fit into this category.
And there's programming that goes on with TTLP that I am not aware of or unsure that, let's say, the YW. I think we're sending too strong of a message in that. That's my opinion, and we'll be voting as such. But just have a concern with that, just for notation.
Michelle, you had the same concern. Anybody else with that concern? No. Can we note that or highlight that in a color just so we can go back to it? Yeah. Other notes, concerns, perfect. Thank you. So would we like to get past this screen now and onto another one? I see a nod from Deborah. Okay. Main screen or capital? M or C? All those
M.
for C.
C.
M, C,
C.
C, C it is. All right, our capital funding.
I did look in the notes, and DPW did make a recommendation of a street. They recommended Hayes Street, Conklin to Webster for 130,000.
South side. right?
I live over, not in that specific area. I'm off of the Vestal Ave side, of the south side and not on the Conklin Ave side of the south side. However, when they said Hayes Street, I'm like, oh, I know exactly where that is. So I took a little drive past it, and don't get me wrong, it definitely needs to be fixed. But it appears to only really be bad up toward like school by Conklin Ave area. I've seen a lot of streets that are in a worse condition than that. I could be wrong. I mean, I know this is their kind of neck of the woods. So I could be wrong, but yeah, it's like a lot of streets need repair. Of Hayes isn't necessarily the one that we should focus on right now. I'm all for fixing any street at this point, honestly. I think there might be other ones we could possibly fix.
I just add in, this is something I didn't know about when I first came on. The streets have to qualify by the, so even if we think that, you know, part of Vestal Ave is really bad, if that doesn't qualify as a low to moderate income area, then that they can't use his funds for that.
And there's also rules on residential versus business sections.
Yeah.
2 years ago, I think it was, where we had the Prospect, wasn't it Prospect or
Or
Glenwood?
Glenwood.
And they were like, yeah, that doesn't meet it.
I think it would be worth adding as well with Hayes, and to your mention, is it Jordan? With it being as close, I'm on Baldwin, which is just 2 streets over from Hayes, and that area up near Conklin, when Benjamin Franklin students and families are doing drop off and pickup, that area is a lot of traffic, pretty congested, and I think focusing on it for rehab not only baseline improves the street, but kind of improves the experience for the intersection there. Just worth noting, not to say that that would be the only street, but
It was curb, sidewalks and mill, right? Wasn't that their suggestion? Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Hayes Street's not on that, but these roads here are listed, are eligible. So they said.
Can you make that a little bigger for the people?
So I have a question. Do we have any information about what they've spent in the past? Because specifically, I remember that we voted yes to have Lockwood Street mill and paved, and that has not happened yet. So I would like to see if, you know, when we approve these, are they actually doing it, or are they asking for like some type of budget modification or whatever? I would like some information on that, which I know we're past that stage, so maybe for next time.
Tell you, they did use up all the street money from last year. The last grouping of CDBG funded streets was Liberty. And what were the other two? Hold on.
If I'm not mistaken, it was my first year on this committee, and I live on Lockwood Street, so.
It was Pleasant Street, Pleasant Ave, Liberty, were funded with CDBG last year.
Okay.
Remember, what we recommend doesn't always get approved by city council and the mayor.
But what we recommend is what the city. Yeah.
Oh, they asked for it.
We recommend what the city, you know, we rarely buck what they say, right? So that would be something to look into. When was?
I remember my first year on, they told me my street had been done. And I was like, I've lived on this street forever. I am 47 years old and it's been done once in my entire life. It has not been done lately. And they had to go back and they sent me an email and apologized and said it was on the list to be done and they ran out of money and time that year. And they never did up my street. And then it didn't come back on the next year.
And that could be the case, but I mean, it's been patched at least twice since we voted for it. So somebody's paying attention. It's just, I would like to know, if the funds are actually spent or allocated to where, when they tell us what is gonna happen with it.
Do you know, Steve, do you know if that app the city has, mine no longer works, but do they have one that goes around, you can report the stuff still? Yeah. I had that, it was working and then it stopped for me. I used to go and take pictures everywhere. I drove all over. I was like the pothole king of the city of Binghamton. I would, Bernice and the whole crew in that office for a long time. I was on a first name basis with all of them. And they're like, is it Turtle Lake? I learned all those phrases of whether the street was turtling and how the cracks happen and stuff. But beyond my district, all over the place. If I fell in a pothole, I pulled around the corner, came out, took a picture. It was awful. Or have no life.
Jason, according to the news report that they had, I believe it was yesterday, when they were touting the pothole repair, I believe it's supposed to be. But I found a situation with another phone number on the website that was not correct, so it may be in flux.
Okay, thank you. All right, so here we are in our capital improvement. We have no numbers in there yet. We have some requests for the American Civic Association, their bathroom rehab, 131 Front Street for $50,000. It's moving. We have the Association of AVRE, if everyone remembers, their facade on the side of the building is crumbling. That's an expensive request of $175,000. Discovery Center of the Southern Tier, Pirate Ship Playground at 60 Morgan, $40,566. The Greater Opportunities of Broome and Shenango, Capital Improvement, 5 West State, $106,400. I believe that was where their parking lot is sinking, right? Curbs. TAC, housing renovation, 3 Lydia, $50,000. What's your CDAC thing that says? So those two you'd like to do as Chodos, not funded in this capital line. Okay. Oh,
will-
I remember this.
Will that get discussed when we move to home Chodo set aside?
We don't really have a Chodo application process.
I guess I would say I think we should first, and then second, can I put my recommendation regarding Chodo prioritization and preferences on the record here? Does it not make sense?
If you guys want to have a project.
And I'm sorry, I don't mean a specific project. I meant the parameters of the Chodo allocations. Yes.
They are required to sign off. They are following fair housing requirements.
Right. I think, so your response was helpful. Thank you. Could I just read quickly my response to your response? Is that okay with? So I don't know if I don't know if y'all read through the thread, so I'll just read my response, Steve, to your response. So I understand that Chodos are not regulatorily required to target that 30% AMI, but not only would the previously unused Chodo funding for home ARP non-congregate shelter have targeted the extremely low income households, our greatest deficits in available affordable housing within the city are among extremely low income renters. So my recommendation, as I put in the email, would be to limit new development to projects that meet that identified community need and prioritize extremely low income development. Just for a little bit of context, and these are 2019 numbers, I've not done the math post-COVID. But we have just under 5,000 extremely low income renters in the city of Binghamton and only 1,060 affordable available units. That's a deficit of 3,535. We actually have a surplus when it comes to low income units. We have a slight deficit when it comes to very low income, which has been the typical target for CHODO. So again, I'm just recommending that if we're going to fund new development using CHODO money, we should prioritize where our greatest deficits are at the extremely low income level. And I do hear you when you say that the CHODO applicants have to check the box that they affirmatively market and follow fair housing. However, 100% of home funds allocated particularly to the city's homebuyer programs have benefited white households. 88% of home funds allocated for homeowner rehab have benefited white households. Even among rental projects, 78% of home assistance has benefited white households. So we're disproportionately represented in the entirely wrong direction when it comes to disparities among Black and brown households. So the recommendation very specifically would be not just that they check a box, but that they have to demonstrate what it is they're doing to both affirmatively market and ensure that there are fair housing compliance, no racial disparities in access and outcomes.
You wanting it to only be along racial, or do you want to also focus on disabled, or any of those other elderly or any other groups that are disproportionately affected?
I mean, I think we need to very specifically identify racial, just given the disproportionate representation that we're seeing. But I mean, protected classes under fair housing are such for a reason. But I think they need to, the onus should be on the applicants to not just check the box, but are they tracking whether there are disparities in folks who are accessing their programs, whether there are disparities in outcomes? If so, how? Because they should be. And then if they're identifying disparities, how are they modifying how they affirmatively market so that they're targeting underserved populations the way they should be? Thank you. I'm a data nerd, so if anybody wants any of my data, I will freely give it. It's my favorite thing.
So what I've written down here, it's going to be difficult to move this. You're kind of going around things, but let's see if we can post it in here and move it on up the chain. We did that with salaries before, so if it's forced through, it's a possibility. So I have in the notes there, request for 30% AMI targeting and proof of affirmatively I misspelled that, affirmatively targeting underserved population groups. Will that work? So basically what I'm thinking is, and this is sort of beyond the CDAC, when we do the RFP, we can require as part of the RFP process, a requirement that they are targeting 30%, or at least it might be better to say attempting to target 30%, because I can see a situation where they say we can't get anyone in. I know it may sound crazy, but
No, it doesn't sound crazy. I know that it's not easy, but it's still, we
Yeah.
have the deficits we have at that level because we've not been proactive in
Well,
prioritizing.
the only problem with CHODOs is if they cannot find someone to go into the units.
Yeah.
After a certain point, the city then owes HUD back from the taxpayer an amount of money if they cannot fill that unit. So if we bind them with the 30% and they cannot find someone that's 30%, we could put in the contract, you could go up to 50% if you can prove you were unable to fill that with a 30% role. That's kind of how we would do it. Just because if they don't meet that, if they simply leave a unit empty after a certain period of time, it no longer qualifies to meet the CHODO requirements.
We had over 2,700 individuals who were homeless last year and over 3,500 households.
Yeah,
Right
no,
now
I understand that. And the only issue I am seeing this is it's not as simple as just picking people up and putting them in units. There are so many other factors involved with that,
I
including
get that it's
people.
hard.
Yeah, that's
We
the only
have to
thing. And
do it.
that's, we can definitely save the 30%, but if we say only 30%, it leaves us vulnerable to a situation where if a unit is unable to be filled, then the taxpayer owes HUD back $200,000+ per unit.
Can we give preference to applicants who are targeting only 30%?
Absolutely. No, that totally can go in the
And then that
RFP.
covers it.
Yeah.
So
And then the other one for the affirmatively targeting underserved population, we could include that as part of the RFP, is that they have to prove it. They have to show whatever proof they're using to affirmatively target groups that have had unfair housing practices against them in the past. Would that work?
I think so.
Okay.
Ebony, does that? I know it's something we've talked about quite a bit. Yeah, okay.
I took that opportunity for someone who has far more experience in the matter to talk, and that I enjoy listening to stat geeks. I love it. All right, so where do we want to start on capital projects here? Anyone have a priority? Anyone want to go with the streets the city has suggested, park upgrades?
I'll talk about the Discovery Center,
Okay,
that capital project. So I have 3 children. They are prime Discovery Center ages. We go there frequently. We have the annual membership. And I ran it past them. I was like, guys, what do you think about a new playground? And to quote my 10-year-old, he said, "Oh, nah, that's stupid," when I told him they were going to get rid of the basketball courts. So I was like, well, what do you guys suggest? Because they're saying that the basketball courts are too high for little kids. My 10-year-old had the $1 million solution. He said, "We have an adjustable basketball court. Why can't they get one?" Touche, kid, touche. I don't think we need 107, what is that? 100 and something $1,000 they wanted to fix that. Well, I guess they're only asking for 40 from us, but the total project's like 100 and something $1,000. So I don't know if that's something we should be funding. If that's what they're trying to do, is get rid of basketball courts. Plus, that's really the only basketball court in that area. Other than that, you have to go down to MacArthur or someplace else. So I think that we should just leave it the way it is, personally. Out of the mouth of babes. My kids go there all the time, and that was their suggestion.
I do tend to like the project. I think the Discovery Center, like you said, I've got young kids. It is a staple in the area, and there may not be a lot of basketball courts in that area, but there are no pirate ship playgrounds in the area. So and it serves a lot of kids. A lot of kids from the city go there. A lot of kids from a lot of low income, kids go there through the programming and everything like that. But I don't know. I tend to like it.
I do not have kids, but I am a fantastic gunkle, and I take my nephews to Discovery Center and the reading garden and the playground and go inside. And I just know from his Lego preferences that a pirate ship would be, if I took him to a place with a pirate ship, I'd be the world's greatest uncle. So I like the project. I don't know if we can afford to give them $40,000 worth of the project, but I'd like to see it funded to some level.
I have a question that goes with what Jordan was saying. Do we know why they put in a basketball court at the Discovery Center? Because quite honestly, that seems incongruous to me when I think about what I think the Discovery Center is about. It's more like the pirate ship is something that's more conducive. And is there an alternative anywhere, maybe Ross Park or somewhere where a basketball court could be put in?
I know there are quite a few empty lots on the south side of Binghamton. There's 2 right on my street, literally kitty corner. One's this way from my house. I have talked to quite a few people at the city hall about turning it into like a green space, a little playground, a community garden. it's all been shot down because the area is unsavory, from what I've been told. So I don't know.
We've got something in the ward called Sunflower Park. That might be an alternative that we could talk to you about getting into, and that way, you know, the pirate ship, which is really kind of cool and more conducive to the Discovery Center's mission, could go through, and then maybe we can find someplace else for that, because both of those things are very important.
The court in question predates the Discovery Center.
Oh,
That's part of the
Hmm.
original Ross Park master plan that has just crumbled and been rebuilt and is being redone.
That's what I was gonna ask. Is that basketball court, is that owned by the city
Yeah,
Parks Department?
yeah.
And so, and I wasn't here for their Discovery Center presentation, I guess. But they're saying that they're taking that basketball court
It's-
and that's what's gonna
It's
be
in
the pirate
it's
ship?
in the island within the parking lots that is the reading garden.
Right,
So the city did the police car thing with them
Right.
and everything.
right.
It's the next 15 feet away. It's the next little piece of that island. Is expansion of the reading garden, basically on city property that the Discovery Center leases, I guess.
So the city is gonna let them do that, Steve, the Parks Department? I've been up there and that basketball court has been utilized every time I've taken my grandkids up there. There's teenage kids playing basketball. So I'm sort of surprised. I mean, I'm all for the Discovery Center. It's a great place.
Ship. and take-
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed it.
Ye-
Yeah,
I was like, people about if you were a little kid. Yeah, there's some things today.
yeah.
Um,
No, I'm all for it. I mean, the Discovery Center is a jewel of the city.
I
you
just
know.
wonder, are
they
we
don't.
prioritizing again certain age groups over others? And I didn't think about that till you just said that the basketball courts frequently used. Having been a teen at one point in time in the city of Binghamton, we get to a point in the city and we just kind of forget them, and then there's nothing for people. And then we wonder why when they're 18 and graduate from high school, they're gone. And I wish I had remembered what the plan was for that, like for basketball or redesigning the park. I know they're redoing all kinds of stuff at the park, so it very well could be being put in a different place. I don't know.
Test.
Yeah,
Test,
and we
test,
could
test,
make
test,
that
test.
recommendation right down here in park upgrades. New basketball court in the south side.
Justin.
I know I wasn't here. Who did I talk over? I'll just,
Hold on,
yeah,
Deborah, sorry.
that's okay.
In the actual proposal, I went back and the intended age range is 2 to 12 with a capacity of 47. The part that I liked about it is the site preparation, which is actually phase 2, where there's a rubberized safety service over the entire area. I think that's important. But again, where do we put the basketball court if it's being utilized as you're saying? Because
Correct.
this only goes intended through age 12.
Yep.
So just information point.
Well,
I-
again, we can, go ahead.
Well, and I know that I wasn't here for the presentations, so don't have all the context, but the adjustable basketball hoops are a very simple option. if that's the concern, particularly because that space is so well used and there's not a lot to offer that teen age group in that area as it is. So whether we still fund Discovery Center, but make the recommendation clear that we're not getting rid of a youth service in order to do so and that it's put elsewhere, that feels responsible.
Yeah, I think that would be my position on this, that we do fund the pirate ship, but maybe down here in park upgrades, we say throw some money at a basketball court so that it's not a service that's being lost to teenagers in the city of Binghamton or adults.
I do need to stress something. Ross Park is not eligible for CDBG in a general sense. The Discovery Center is eligible because of their target demographic, but Ross Park improvements in general are not eligible due to the zoo. It's considered a regional park. It's not considered a local park, and therefore we can't put any CDBG money into it. We can put it into the Discovery Center, but that's it.
We can do, is there a park on the south side?
Well, so I went through and looked at the parks, list of possible CDBG projects. And the following parks, they have recommendations for improvements to the basketball courts. It's not all new or mobile things, but Cherry Lindsay, Columbus, Fairview, Kent Playgrounds, Union Park, Valley Street Park, and Webster Street Park all have basketball court improvements. I will say the one about the Columbus Park, I'm a little hesitant on, simply because we put CDBG money into it just a few years ago to install the new park, the new basketball courts, and they're already wanting to move them. My conversation with HUD, Rashika calmly and without any emotion said, hell the blank no, you just put money into it. So I don't think that one's ineligible, but the rest should be fine.
Yeah, so you're saying that those are eligible, but there's no recommendations yet.
No, I'm just saying that those are the ones the Parks Department said, because the Parks Department gave us huge list of potential parks improvements. Those are eligible parks, CDBG eligible parks requesting basketball. So if you're wanting to offset a potential loss of basketball courts, these are potentials you could do. I don't know off the top of my head which ones are on the south side though.
Webster.
Webster's the only one.
And it is in rough shape.
And the Parks Department said mill and pave and surface the basketball court $100,000. So.
Basketball courts are.
I mean, and Webster is south side east, whereas this project is south side west. But I mean, Webster is in pretty poor shape.
Moving on.
What's our, hold on, I had it written down. What's our target dollar amount in this section? Oh, good.
There is no
Great.
cap on capital projects other than the total amount and all the minimums you have to spend. And don't forget, you've already allocated some to service programs. Is it easier if you go to the main page and kind of work backwards from there?
probably.
Yes.
We tried.
It's 8 o'clock. Okay.
All right.
I can talk everyone again, I can explain each one of these. This is the minimum that has to go in there for various reasons. This is the maximum amount you can put in there for also various reasons. For salaries, generally maximum is the amount we've calculated the max the city could spend on salaries. Then I put in your calendar 2023 expenses here, so you could see how much they spent in calendar 20, or how much they were awarded in calendar 2023, or expended, sorry. So last year for the full 12 months, how much they expended in this line, and then how much is sort of available as of the end of March 2024. So hopefully that, and along with last year's budget, will help you guys figure out. The first line, do you want me to just go line by line, or do you guys want me to, do you guys know the lines? Okay, first line is admin salaries. That includes, well, your stipends plus pretty much everyone who works in my office. other than planning. Fair housing is just for fair housing outreach. Planning is for planning and grant, non-CDBG grant stuff. That's generally Juliet and Tito's usage. And occasionally also we pay Broome County $7,000 for GIS services that I can't seem to get us out of. I've tried. Then BLDC salaries is here. Then we have the housing salaries. So this is the additional salaries out of my staff for the rehab program, the first-time homebuyer program. Code enforcement salaries are pretty self-explanatory. Home purchase assistance and repairs is the program out of my office for helping people either purchase homes or rehab their homes. Lettuce and asbestos risk assessment is kind of a needed thing for our rehab work. First Word Action Council Senior Housing Repair Program. Did you guys get an application for that? Did they put in an application? I can't even remember anymore. That's the Senior Housing Repair Program. Demolition blight removal, we've talked about that before. And then the Binghamton Homeownership Academy, that kind of we outreach to Metro to do the Homeownership Academy and do intake for our rehab and home purchase programs. So a lot of salaries, but other things too.
Can I ask a question on the demolition blight removal?
Mhm.
I'm not aware of any parameters within that block that would either recommend, I don't know if we can recommend, but to where, because particularly if we're increasing because of the Ansru properties, like you mentioned, can we recommend or request a plan where if we're removing and thus reducing the amount of affordable housing, that they build to scale or to match that deficit?
As in to spend the same amount on new home construction? I can tell you this, the properties that are demolished are not exactly what you would call high quality housing at all. They're usually
aware.
ones that are leaning over and about to fall apart or have been fire damaged.
I'm aware, but there are several landlords who maintain those properties. I don't mean maintain in terms of habitability. I mean, they still own them.
Yeah.
And they are continuing to lease them out because we have no proactive code enforcement. So
Yeah.
with that, if we're reducing, because we've consistently done demolition, and I get it when we're talking about properties that cannot be rehabbed or are going to cost too much to rehab. But if we're removing existing affordable housing, given the deficits we already have, I would like to recommend that we are also prioritizing funding for development at those same levels.
Same levels money wise or same levels
I don't-
numbers of units?
I'm not sure I know. Well, units for sure.
okay.
Yeah, units probably makes more sense. I don't know how that breaks down in a budget table. It probably doesn't, but I'm just curious. I haven't seen that anywhere in any of the paperwork.
So it's very difficult to do new housing construction with CDBG. It's something the city's never done before. It requires an extra step. It's like a thing that's similar to a CHODO. I think it's called a neighborhood development organization. So that's something we've never done before. If we want to pursue that, that's fine. I'm going to have to do some research and figure out exactly how we would be able to do it, but it would essentially be a CDBG version of a CHODO. The other thing you can do is there is money for home purchase assistance, which can move people out of a cycle of rental housing they can't afford into purchasing lower cost homes that they can afford. But that's generally not going to be your 30 to 50, which I know you're targeting. Those would probably be the 50 to 80s. CDBG can be used for rental rehab. The problem with using CDBG for rental rehab is figuring a way of making sure landlords and agency, well, it wouldn't be as much with agencies, but landlords, especially if they're private landlords, if they're going to utilize rehab funds, that they're not going to turn around.
Sure. No, I get that.
Bye. Get out of my apartment. I'm going to rent to someone else who can afford more expensive. And so this is something we've been talking about. I've been talking about this with my boss. I've been talking with BLDC about potentially using, especially our restricted loan money for that.
Mhm.
So it's going to be, if you want to say a 1-for-1 unit, 1 unit for demo to 1 unit, That's an interesting policy. I would be interested to know what the mayor's office would say about that. I'm just trying to figure out within this how we do that. Because your housing is pretty much going to be CDBG or, potentially the Chodo projects.
And I'll acknowledge, I know that I came late to this party, so I don't, if this is something that can't necessarily be figured out tonight, given that it's 8:06, I get that. I would love to see it involved in the conversation before we get to the next round.
I
next
do
year.
like the idea of the 1-to-1.
Yeah.
I do know though that we have more vacant units, which is probably the bigger situation than we have. Our vacancy rate's incredibly high. So maybe that's the target, is to try, instead of the demos, or we try to turn the vacant units that are near enough to fixable and turn them into something that is usable. But I do like the 1 unit to 1 unit. Definitely bring this up. This is something I recommend, like literally emailing the mayor's office with. I like the idea. I'll back you up on it. I like the idea of us trying to work it into our policies and procedures. It would be great, but it's difficult within the framework of just the CDBG and HUD monies on how to do that within the budget.
I'd like to also mention that when we were at the mayor's office, this is totally off target, but I think it applies here, and I'd like us to think about this. I was watching CBS Sunday Morning, and they talked about a Housing First program in Houston that was very, very successful. I asked the mayor about it. It was presented at a mayor's conference, and I got the typical, well, they ran out of money, but there are options here that we need to talk about. And I think we need to talk about what we can do under CDBG and then take to council in the mayor's office, like, guys, this is a problem. It's a real problem. And how do we do this? And it's got to be innovative and it's got to be different. So I think we should maybe even have another little subcommittee meeting of people that are into this, so we can do what we can do, but it's a much bigger problem. So let's try.
Yeah, thank you.
I feel like we discuss this every year and we never get something into plan or
Well,
into work.
Generally, if you're going to talk about rentals, you're going to talk about Chodos.
Right.
Although CDBG could be used for it. And if you're talking about homeowners, that's going to be more CDBG, although home money could be used for it as well. So it's kind of like, those are your sort of two pots to mess around with. And we do have a minimum amount of Chodo money, and recommendation here is to put it all in a Chodos. We want to do a big old RFP here in a few months. So.
Okay.
I would just like to add it, regarding demolition and blight, I'm all for using as much money as we possibly can to get rid of the blight. So
You don't think some of those should be rehabilitated?
no,
No?
some of those that I'm thinking of on Fayette Street,
I will tell you this,
those are the Anzaroot ones.
of the projects we demolished last year, not one of those, and I had to go take pictures and do the ERRs, not one of those was a rehabable project. These were killers. I wouldn't have walked inside these buildings. They were that dangerous.
And I think that's fair. It's just, there's enough opportunity to, again, that 1-to-1.
Good concept.
I agree with Rebecca, but I have a question. Now that zoning laws have changed, is that why when a property is demolished, something is not going in that space?
Oh, so once we demolish a project now, essentially the city owns the property. We own the property, we demolish the property. Generally, the turnaround there is we do what's called the side lot program, where we sell them to the neighbors.
Community members.
It's the neighbors of the property. I mean, some have
Mhm.
been turned into community gardens, but generally they're sold to the neighboring properties to use essentially as a slightly bigger yard. There's a limitation, they're not allowed to use them for, build a building other than a shed. And it's basically, we kind of treat it sort of like the flood buyout program, where we demolish the structure and then it's essentially green space from then on.
And that's what I'm not understanding is because on both sides of my house, there have been that were demolished. But when I inquired about purchasing one of those lots, they said you could only do a community garden in that space. You could not build.
Are you in the floodplain?
I don't know, am I?
Do you pay flood insurance? Do you pay
No.
flood insurance? No?
But we are in a floodplain.
That's the only thing I can think
Ask
of.
it to go-
Okay.
I don't know the specifics of the project I don't know the property. you're
I
talking
just
about.
know when I asked it, I asked, well, why won't you allow a rebuild? Because one of the options that I was thinking of was putting a double like, trailer in that vacant spot.
I can say you the side lots, no, the side lots, you could not do any new structures on the side
Yes.
lots. Yes.
So I just wanted clarification on, is that even a possibility to rebuild on those spaces that are being demolished?
There's no HUD regulations against it. I think a lot of the demo properties happen to be in the floodplains just because those properties got damaged and then did not get rebuilt. Right. I don't think there's anything HUD wise, but I think the city's policy in and of itself is leave them as green space. But that means city policy can change. Yeah. Eight 11. We're gonna have a special meeting, aren't we? I'm not bringing pizza to the next meeting.
So that was my New Year's resolution, was to stop watching that stuff, and now I'm bored. I can't watch it, because like, it gets me scared. I do so, I do so.
Okay. Let's start there.
What would you like me to do?
Can we,
Justin, wait, I was just to continue our train of thought, we're saying try to do the easiest parts first. So if you look at the home purchase assistance and repairs, see how the money they got there in the unencumbered and available?
uh-huh,
Let's just put the minimum.
Which is all PI. That's all program income.
that's fine. Can we start with the minimums and all of them and then just build off them or no?
Minimums or maximums? You only have 700,000 to go.
I can bring it around to them.
Bogart and the cake over there.
This cake is worth.
Would you all like crumbs of cake over here?
It is still here.
Here, have
Eat crumbs.
have the last remnants. You can lick the knife. I'm just kidding. I don't want any.
This is true. If it weren't for Rebecca, we probably would have kept it at this end of the day. I mean, our
Does look
children
good, but-
across the dark thing, right? I was just the very last.
You talking to me? Deb, were you saying anything?
Board of Elections.
Oh, okay.
He could be a big solution. Thank you.
No, I'm good. Thank you. I was just giving you crap.
He showed me a picture of him giving his mom when she remarried. It was so cute. He was, he took her down the aisle.
Was this recently or was he a
No, it
little
was,
boy?
no, he was a young man.
Oh, young man,
But
okay.
he did tell his mom, the time when I'm waiting for the mayor, and I thought, wow, like I wish my kid would do that, right? I hope my kid would do that,
Right.
you know?
Mine are at that age where they don't listen to me. I don't know anything.
Mine's gonna be a sis.
Yeah.
Mine's good.
Oh, no, so yours is at the age where they're like just.
He's
done
talking about
accident
his
years.
arthritis, you know, like he calls me up and oh my.
Steve,
Because he-
can I just ask a quick question just while we're finishing up?
Yeah,
The items we spoke about, ADA, is this where that comes into those suggestions, but without dollar amounts?
well, ADA capital improvements go under the CDBG capital. If you want to say anything, that's what all these red boxes were for you guys to put in new projects if you wanted. But if it was a service project, it would go into the services, but service. You can still modify services, although you guys have kind of quote unquote finalized, but it's not final until you do a final vote. So any service activities would be under that, but yeah, capital would be here. They're just doing the main page, I think, to get a clue as to what to do before jumping into capital.
Thank you.
You know, my sister was the next walk over. So we have this like family jail that I birthed in nursing, and then after that. they go to
Everybody else,
real mom's
the
jail.
village takes over, right?
Okay,
That's the.
All right.
That's the way it always was.
let's attack this with speed.
Okay, that's the cake. You distracted us completely. Are we beyond? Repair.
I wanna know if that fifth thing was turnover.
So last year we awarded
Oh, the thing.
administration 129,325, is that what we're saying?
Yes, and they spend 119, and there's still roughly 30 on the in the line.
We find solutions.
Yes.
So there was stuff held over from a previous year in that encumbered line?
Yeah, sort of, kind of. But remember that the fiscal year lasts until August.
Oh,
So
right.
projecting forward an addition, you have to project forward kind of an additional 4 or 5 months. But in the calendar year 2023, they spend about $120,000. So
I think we should put the maximum in on that line.
and that is based off our calculations, based off of,
Yeah.
what they, no, I'm not saying yes to do that. I'm just saying that's based off the calculations, the max calculations for salaries we determined. There was a lot of math involved.
Right. So why don't we just put that in there for now and see where,
I agree. I certainly think that we want to fund that.
That does include the new person in my office, assuming everything goes fine and we're good with it. City council approved it, so we're just in the process of hiring someone now.
so if we put the maximums in each line and then we can see where we're at and then go backwards, right? Instead of going minimum and trying to go up incrementally.
Yeah, that makes sense in my brain too, yeah.
Actually, I'm gonna make a recommendation because I know one line goes up to that. Can you guys do home real quick? So home, the eligible expenses are housing admin, rehab, TBRA, and CHOTA set aside. Housing admin is the salaries for the guys in my office running the housing program. The rehab program currently has over $500,000 in it, and we spent $150,000 last year. TBRA program, currently we have a multi-year, a 3+ year contract with Binghamton Housing Authority for security deposits. And so it would be difficult to put additional TBRA funding into that because they're not even spending the current ones as quickly as you would put additional funding in. Binghamton Housing Authority.
Probably not, because they're not bringing new people in.
Well, yeah, it depends on when it's both the public housing as well as their Section 8. But their Section 8 guys do move. The people on Section 8 do move. So they do use the money. It's just they got like $200 and something thousand to spend over like 3 or 5 years. We are going to put we're going to probably do an RFP for home ARP TBRA money, just for other agencies to try to apply for probably something similar. I just don't think we can get it through Housing Authority. I don't think they have the capacity to use additional TBRA money. So that if you do want to put TBRA money in here, I'll tell you that. it maybe gets tacked on to the home ARP, but since we haven't even gotten the home ARP out yet, we don't know essentially what the demand is from agencies for that amount of programming. So, and my original thing, I had suggested put all of it in the CHOTA set aside or the max amount of the CHOTA set aside, because we're going to be doing an RFP for a large CHOTA project scattered site for 3 different properties, including the 2 MES properties I talked about earlier. I think the other one's on Clinton Street. And we're basically going to let CHOTOs apply. So going back to what Rebecca said, we can throw in there requirement that they need to absolutely target 30%, or you get more points on your thing if you're only going to target 30%, or some. We'll have to figure out the language within it. And then we can also include the affirmatively further fair housing thing as well in that. So that's that. But you should probably do home first, because that affects the housing salary line up above. In this case, the admin let's see here. The maximum you can put in this line would be roughly 68,000.
Okay, let's put 68,000 there then.
Rehab line, the minimum, that's program income. I think I explained this before. Program income always is going to go into the rehab lines because that's the lines that generate it. Plus, it makes it easier to edit them once a year when they come shorter.
Minimums. It seems responsible to go with the minimum on that one.
Okay.
Then, right, 95.
Because then it would get basically 514 of encumbered plus 95,000. So over 600,000, which I am confident we're going to do more rehabs over the coming year. I can't guarantee it. I think we're starting to see where problems have occurred and why it's getting dragged out. And we have come up with some plans of tackling it, but it's not a guarantee yet. So.
And you're saying the next one's already funded?
Which one? Tibra? Yeah, Tibra basically Tibra is like Section 8. You can either do rental assistance or security deposit assistance. It's a complex program, so you really need an agency that kind of already is handling housing to run it. I would not want to run it out of my office without hiring a brand new person to do it. It's insane. So BHA is able to tack it onto their existing Section 8/public housing programs, and that's what they've been doing. But it's like droplets coming out, I might do $6,000 a month for it's a $275,000 contract, I think. So it's going to take a while to get used up. But like I said, we do have a home ARP Tibra line that we're going to go to an RFP for. But again, I don't know what the demand is going to be for agencies out there to utilize it.
Any suggestions on this line?
Are you thinking that we should put the minimum on that line?
What, for CHOTA set aside?
Yeah.
I would recommend putting the 517,000. So we can, that's the amount of money you've got left.
Okay.
Basically with
Okay, I
home,
see.
you put as much as you can into admin. Putting more into rehab is overstuffing the sausage. Tibra's already got a contract for the next few years. Literally the only thing left is the CHOTA set aside.
Okay,
Yeah,
then
I
put that in then.
And I think our rates of rehab too are over the national kind of rate. So, I mean, overstuffing the sausage certainly is a fair term.
I mean, that's 185,000 last year. That was probably about 4 projects. And I think we should be able to easily double that, and hopefully we will. But with 400, if I put this in here, and I'm trying not to lead, but I do have to step into curiosity. That's 2+ rental units. Probably going to be more about 3 or 4 rental units that target low income people. So for the next 15 to 25 years. they literally have to they have to be rented out to someone who is low income. You have to verify it annually. That's the point of the Choto program.
Okay, so what's next?
Okay. Yeah, now, okay, so now it fixed this. All right. So now the salaries got readjusted. There we go. So basically that dropped the maximum for housing down. I'm just following along, putting the maximum. I could probably just copy this stuff over. No. Copy.
Can I ask a question about the code enforcement piece?
But the what?
The code enforcement?
Yeah.
Amount. And I don't know if this directly correlates, but code requested a reduction. Last year, city council approved, they reduced capacity, but it was supposed to be a temporary reduction so that they could level set an increase. Are we aware whether they intend to in fact increase so they can increase capacity?
I don't have any information about that. Let me see if code enforcement said anything when they presented.
Actually, Steve, that was, if I understand Rebecca's question, I did ask Mr. Schleider
Mm.
if his figures included that increase, and he indicated that it did. Increase in personnel, is that what you're asking? Right, that they're
So which
increasing.
number would that be?
This number here, so the numbers that are maximum here, these are the literal calculated salaries that they've done over 12 months. So
So that's the number he said included the increase.
Yes, and I don't remember if he gave us a number, but I did specifically ask him if that
How-
meant more code
how is
enforcement
it
officers.
Less than their 2023 expense then?
because it's the timing of it. So the calculation, the 2023 is the amount they actually spent. The maximum here is the amount they've spent over the last 12 months, whereas the calendar 2023 expenses are the expenses they did January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2023. So it's going to be different just because they're out of phase.
Okay.
But as of the most recent information I had over an estimated 12-month period, the 12-month period, they have spent 214,716.94. Of HUD eligible salary reimbursements. That's the trick here is so previously we used to kind of just throw salary money, but now due to HUD becoming stricter, the departments literally have to track their hours now. And so now we've had our first solid 12 months of period where people are supposed to be doing that. So we actually have, instead of just saying, oh, I think they'll spend $100,000. No, now this is the actual amounts they spent.
Chris said their budget was $571,000, and that of that budget, 234,000 came from CDAC in fiscal year 49.
Yeah, that's this right here.
I think I'm just confused as to why, like, we talk so often about code not being funded to capacity. That's why they've consistently refused proactive adjustments. I guess I'm just confused why they wouldn't be asking for more or identifying more so that they can actually be funded to preserve existing stock, because they're not currently doing that. But that may not be a conversation. I don't know if that's a conversation for this table, that this is. what we're
So-
meeting.
That's a conversation.
They're funded currently in fiscal year 49, they're funded for 6 inspectors. They only have 4 of those positions filled.
It's a travesty.
Raises in 2023 became available because of the CDAC increase in funding. He says they're not really an enforcement, they're more of a compel, ask,
Code.
urge.
Yeah, Chris has called it the Code Observation Department. However, that is the opposite of how code enforcement should be operating.
And part of that
And
is,
why we're spending so much money on demolition and blight.
I wish she'd stop being commonsensical.
Yeah,
Stop that.
I would say one thing too, with code, I know that, he said there's 6 positions, right? And then there's only 4 filled, right? I do know though that one of the reasons is it's really hard to find someone, I guess, for
They
the
get-
salary.
they
and-
get them
yeah,
and they
they don't
leave them
see
like a
any-
month later.
That salary.
Right, which is another reason I'm confused why they wouldn't
Mhm.
be asking for more, like
Yep.
fund it to capacity so they can actually do their
Yep.
jobs effectively.
Yep.
What they're asking. This one, okay. What they're asking for and what they actually spend are two different things. So the maximum here is what they actually spent. The only one actually spent within 12 months' time.
You know, and I get that we can't force them to do. I mean, this body necessarily can't force them to do it differently, but I think it's something to raise. And there's,
We can fund them to encourage them to give raises, can't we? Or no?
Raises, but do they-
Because didn't they
I mean, I
raise in
think-
2023?
The raises are based off of the union.
Oh, okay.
So it's difficult to do that. I will say there was one idea floating around last year of talking about getting them hazard pay, but I have no idea where that went. And I told the person who was talking to me about that, you need to follow up with it. You need to talk to the mayor's office. You need to have data. If you're going to do this, try to do this through CDBG. And I think it's just back burner or fell by the wayside.
I think there's plenty to revise with the current code ordinance to make adjustments to the approach. And that isn't gonna happen tonight. But again, it's something that I would identify. I mean, we can amend and revise the ordinance within the city charter. I want to say it's 246.6, 246 whole chapter entirely. And then fund it, amend it and proactively to scale would be the goal.
Agreed. So where do we want to put the funding now? If we can't force them basically to fill, what do we want to put this at? At
Which line are you looking at now?
code enforcement she's talking about.
Yeah, I know, but so we've got the 214.
We have the maximum for 50 year 50 in there, but if they're not using it, is that what we want to put the funding at? Is that what we're saying?
I'm okay with the maximum. I just don't, that's
Oh, I'm okay with the maximum as well.
Okay. So the next one down, lead and asbestos risk assessment.
You've got, they spent 4470 and they still got 5,000 in the line. I think I suggested 0. Yeah, I suggested 0 for my department for this.
Do we want to go with their suggestion? 0?
Yes.
It just means that the lead and asbestos risk assessment has older year funding that was not spent. If that answers it.
So 0.
Pretty useful when the department heads in the at the computer with the mic.
First ward, senior housing repair program.
Did the mayor talk to you at all about the First Ward Action Council program?
No,
Did they apply this year? Are there there was an application? Okay, good.
they didn't appear though, did they? They did?
Did they?
I'm blanking on that.
I'm sorry, Justin, is this
Yes.
help for the elderly, primarily in the first ward, home improvements?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my very first meeting and the lady was
remember when
Depends
that
where
was?
they-
Was
yeah,
that during
that's
election
Jerry.
season?
That was end of November last year.
Yeah.
During my election season. Okay.
And that is this, yes, the senior minor home repair program. They must be senior, they must be low income. The repairs are limited to no more than $5,000, but most projects are way less than that. Some of them do include things like change a faucet, change a lock. Some are bigger, like ramps. I just approved a ramp project today or yesterday.
So the year 49 budget, we budgeted 85,000. According to this, in 2023's calendar year, they spent 127,598, and they have 10,264 unencumbered currently and available.
And their ask was 85,000.
Their ask was 85,000, is that what you're saying?
And in their application, their ask for this year was 85,000. I'd like to propose we put that in there. Yeah.
Yep. Hold the line on their ask. Okay. Demolition and blight removal. Last year, we budgeted 300,000. They have 82,513.09 unencumbered and available. And they spent in 2023's calendar year 467,495.65. The mayor did say in our meeting on Monday that this is a priority of his. And to please increase that if we can. What do we think about that? I know you said you want to put whatever we can in there. I see some shaking heads agreeing. Eilene's agreeing. Deborah's a thumbs up. John's a.
I agree. Maybe we can even skip ahead to the next one from that. And
And then-
we did put that 20,000 in there. Okay.
Yeah, the homeownership academy is kind of, it is what it is, so. Although we have been exploring potentially changes to our relationship, but I don't want to get into details about that.
Okay.
There is a
so-
line fair housing up here. City still has $20,000. Right now I have Jeff working on training program again. I don't know where he's at. Let me write down, talk to Jeff about. I know where he's at with that. We wanted to get back into regular, we did this a few times, but we didn't do it consistently. And I'd like to be doing this annually, doing fair housing training for landlords, three groups, landlords, students, and regular, just everyone else, students, residents, stakeholders, or whoever. So, but we have 20,000 of just unspent funds that can be used for that. So
Can I ask a
from my
question?
department, I'm just requesting a zero on that.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
Instead of, so there are multiple organizations that I'm aware of that do between community-based or actual nonprofits that are doing trainings. Could that funding also, is it limited to trainings or could it also be, I mean, one of the most effective methods is testing to identify discrimination. I know it happens during analyses of impediments to fair housing.
Yeah.
But I was just meeting with Law New York out in Ithaca yesterday. They've got a program in Oneonta as well. The most effective way to identify actual fair housing violations are the testers.
Okay.
So that would, like, training feels like a duplication to me. But testing is not fully funded or funded at all really anymore.
If you want to sort of add an addendum to this one again, this requires the mayor's office approval. I think it's doable. We'd have to definitely go out to bid on that. It's not something the city would do. So I still think the training is really necessary. Just because we heard that the landlord training especially was extremely well received the way we did it. And I really strongly feel the students are underrepresented in the fair housing education. As much as people hate them and love them at the same time in the city, they are consistently getting screwed over for housing, and treated by crap by landlords, predatory landlords. So, I'm not sure. And of course, also the fair housing could be used to help agencies that are currently doing the training as well, if they needed additional funding or whatever. So that's a possibility too. But I'm not against the testing. You know, is testing more often than once every 5 years necessary? I don't know.
Again, that's just from the conversation that I've had. And I mean, we don't have, I mean, we're about to announce one, but we don't have a local enforcement mechanism for fair housing. So anything to support actually identifying it happens. And then funneling those violations to legal services, legal aid, so they can actually litigate is the thing that actually.
Rebecca, can you talk into the mic?
Sure, sorry. Oh goodness. What did I just say? So I think what I was just representing is like the chief attorney at Law New York was really identifying the most effective way to identify violations and then litigate them so that landlords get the message is the testing. So again, he's seen effectiveness. I also mentioned that we're about to announce one, but up until now, we've not had a local enforcement mechanism for fair housing violations. And it's just a pretty significant gap. This is probably where, when I say we, I don't mean, so I do sit on the board of CNY Fair Housing. I'm not talking about we when I say, or I'm not talking about CNY Fair Housing when I say we. There are multiple organizations. But there is an announcement coming down next week of a Fair Housing Advisory Board that's been put together. But we don't have funding for testing, that's for sure.
And it just, for the purposes of this meeting, I think to bring it. No, I certainly appreciate the education and everything like that. But I do want to note that housing is suggesting 0 for this. I'd like to propose we put in 0.
I mean, we have 20,000 in unused past funds that we can dip into for whatever we do want to do with it.
So 0 for fair housing because they have their encumbered funds.
No, they're available. They're not encumbered yet. It's not,
Unencumbered and available, sorry.
they mean very specific things. All right, so everything said and done, without doing any modifications to the numbers here, you still have about 575,000, which could all be capital projects.
What did we put in for demolition?
Say what?
On the CDBG capital, yep.
Demolition right now is at 300,000. The mayor asked for an increase, yes. He suggested as close to 5 as we could get. Do we want to go to 5 with demolition?
And that includes the, the whole Anza root problem, which is what he was talking about. So it was needs-based. Didn't you get that impression? He was thinking that that's what they were going to need.
And so what would that leave us for capital?
Right now, not changing anything, 575,000 for capital. So currently that includes 300,000 for demolition blight removal.
Okay, so if we bump up the funding to 5 for demo, then that what gets us right around 3 for capital? Is that right?
375,000 for capital.
Yeah, I'd like to play with that number and see how far we can get with capital projects, if everyone else is open to it.
Be with John. Let's see what we leave it at that and then go to capital and see what we spend if we need to
Yeah,
take some more back.
trying to make this easier. Stupid hiding thing. Stop.
That sum of what they're requesting on that next page,
Which one?
their requests.
That's the amount that the application was for.
Right, so
I think 471.
Oh, sum total? Not including the last 200, it's not auto summing, I don't know what. It's 225, 325, 360, 370? Huh? I could put the numbers in.
But then that leaves us nothing for
Yes.
streets or anything.
Correct.
a question about the Trinity project. Isn't that what you deemed as a scatter?
It's gonna
It's
be,
good.
we're wanting to use that as a scattered site Shoto project.
Right, so should we not fund that? Or,
That's my recommendation, is
To-
because we're gonna do it through,
Right.
he was applying, the pastor was applying before he was aware of Choto, and we've had conversations about using it as a Choto project since then.
so line 8 and 9 could be 0.
Yeah, I mean, there's not, I mean, they're nothing right now. They didn't get funding last year, there's nothing like that. Oh. But this doesn't include any parks, streets, or any other capital projects. If you have any other capital project ideas. I have the full list of the parks.
Do we
and
want to fully fund all 4 of the top things? I have concerns on the 175,000 for the facade improvements.
That's the building on Court Street, correct?
Correct.
I believe they cover 8 counties, including Broome. So it is a regional. Does that knock us out or make it more valuable?
No, it does. I kind of, well, the reason it qualifies under CDBG is because the predominance of their clients and the people that work there are considered disabled. And that by the nature alone will automatically qualify the building. AC has to do a little bit more math, and so does Discovery Center. Greater Ops, I think generally they auto qualify, but they have to provide me some numbers, but AVRE is like right in, no problems with qualification there.
So by fully funding those, we only have $3,099.99 for parks and street rehab.
That's a couple of potholes.
That's not even a pothole. The recommendations.
I have a list of all the parks projects here. He gave us a list of about 38. The street specific project they requested was, the DPW requested was Hayes Street from Conklin to Webster, an estimated cost of $130,000. But I can provide you a list of other CDBG eligible streets that they have in their sites if someone wants to do something else.
Can we jump back for just a moment? If you don't mind? Has anyone had eyes on the, no, to capital projects? Have the greater opportunities of Broome, the parking lot improvement that they want? Can anyone speak to the current status of that?
It was the sinking, right?
Right. I think George seems to be indicating that she knows.
I'm kind of familiar with their parking lot. I drive over that way frequently. I know they said that they were concerned about the incinerator from the landfill that was there is like under their parking lot. I do see where they could probably use like a retaining wall. But I don't know if it's necessarily like sinking to like what we think it, like when we hear sinking parking lot, like, oh my God, I'm scared to park there. I would still pull in there, turn or bust a U-turn and everything in there. So like, I don't know, that's just me. I mean, I do see that it needs repair, yes, but
I just want to speak really quick. I work over there every day.
Right.
And that, it does need, the whole, not, the plaza looks horrible and it's horrible to park your car in, and so is over there. So that's just my opinion on that.
Oh, yeah. The ground
Yeah,
there is
That
disaster.
is, that whole area was built, it was Stowe Flats, you know that, and it used to be a landfill. So everything
And
is sinking.
before it was landfill, it was actually our Broome County Fairgrounds. They turned a park in the fairgrounds into a landfill. But it's not just a landfill, it's incinerator,
Ash,
dust, ash,
yeah.
and it just keeps compacting and dissolving and sinking. Plus, they filled in the canal right through there and it,
Yeah, thank you for the insight. That makes sense. I'm familiar with the area, but I hadn't driven in that parking lot.
but I believe they said the reason they needed to do this was that their building was gonna fall out of, with the way the curbs and everything were going, the building was gonna fall out of handicap accessibility because of the curbs and
Oh,
the stuff.
that makes sense.
I think that's what they
Yeah, it
said
would
when
be
they were
hard to
here.
navigate a wheelchair in their parking lot. That's definitely true.
ADA compliance almost always automatically qualifies for CDBG eligibility. Pretty much almost anywhere.
Can I ask a point of procedure here? Streets and parks are part of the traditional block grant. Capital improvements relatively new. Can we look at parks and streets first and then see if there's anything left over? And the new requirements for HUD makes it hard because we used to just take the city's recommendation. So are we now being expected to go street by street and park by park?
I mean, ultimately, it's up to whatever you picked up from the from Joshua Paludi from DPW. Like I said, I looked back through and he did make a recommendation for a specific street. I can give you a list of other eligible streets and you can look at them and see if that you would prefer to have those streets fixed.
But we're not talking about a bottom line figure that we could work with, you know, in view of the time and you know what we've got to get through, are we? Do we? Right
He
now.
has a Hayes Street price. There was a
Yeah,
price.
$130,000 for Hayes Street.
For one street,
Yes,
and that's all he wanted done?
that's all he presented to you guys.
Yeah, let's put that in there. And do we have a recommendation from Parks? Just to give us a, not to
Parks,
play on words, but a ballpark here that we can use? Because it is already 9 o'clock, guys.
DPW Hayes Street, 130. Oh, that's the first thing I'm with it.
I think I missed that meeting because I was sick.
Kent Park, Booth Field was Parks. That was my highlight, what they wanted to do in Parks was Kent Field and Booth,
And did they
Kent
give you a
Park and
did
Booth
they give
Field.
you a figure?
and I don't have a number written down for that. So I didn't know if there was a price on that.
Do we have a figure from Parks?
Anybody remember that?
I wasn't here.
I can look it up. Should have it. Make it small, but should check out for.
Excuse me, can I go back to Hayes Street? I recall the gentleman making the presentation, and again, I'm new to all of this. But he was discussing the benefits of expediting the whole process, which might occur over time, et cetera. So my question is Hayes Street already on the list, the schedule? How does it work? That, that street would be repaved? Or more importantly, would the $130,000 lend to, again, expediting the process of getting Hayes Street complete?
So the way DPW does it is every year they come up with a list of streets that they would like to do.
Mhm.
This is based off of multiple factors, and one of them is people that call up and complain that their street's falling apart. They compile this list and then they have multiple sources of funding. One of them is CDBG. So they have CHIPS funding for the vast majority of their rehab projects, but they do dip into CDBG for CDBG eligible projects from time to time. I will tell you this, DPW almost never does their entire wish list. That almost never happens. They almost always run out of money. Would they be able to spend more money? Probably. How much more money? That I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Wasn't it? Parks,
mean-
the guy's first day? Was that
Yes.
Parks? Yeah. He
Wait,
jumped in. and
What
didn't-
number was I looking up for the parks? 'Cause
What
I'm
was
on my
last year?
page.
What's that?
I'm at my notes for what we wrote down for the parks, or at least what I wrote down for parks.
What did you write down?
I don't remember what I was exactly looking for regarding the question, because it's 9 o'clock at night. I haven't slept yet.
Park and Booth Field was in my notes, so I didn't know if there was a dollar number.
Okay, so, they were talking about redoing the basketball courts at Kent at Booth Field and also the First Ward courts. They were last done 15 years ago, but apparently there's 8 eligible. And I wrote down that his name was Nick Ballard and he was the
Nick.
new director appointee. That's what I
So
wrote regarding that.
They only spent their, okay,
Last year, they only
Yeah.
spent $23,000 and they
and they
still
still
have
have 231. I don't know why
about
we would,
10 times that amount in just unspent money.
why
sitting
would,
there.
yeah, I don't know why we would put anything in there if that's the case. We don't dislike parks, but if they have 230 grand unencumbered,
So what if we just did the haze and then figured out where we were and go back to capital then if we, just leave parks alone?
You're about 126,000 over.
I'm sorry, we're how much?
You're about 126,000 or about $127,000 over.
But that's taking into account all of the capital improvements.
Correct. That's fully funding all the capital
Yeah.
projects.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we shave
Shave.
Yeah.
AVRE or
recall-
GEO.
Yeah, I recall AVRE, the presentation, and they said that if that was not fully funded, they would scale it back. They have, that.
And they had
was
other
ideal,
funding sources,
right?
Didn't he say that? Scale back what they want to do and have.
They
other
would
sources.
work with whatever they were given,
Yeah.
yes, to improve the building. 175 was ideal, but I think that they would still make improvements with less.
Almost every agency getting grant funding will usually say that exact same thing. They'll say, we have to have $20,000 or we can't survive. Well, we'll give you 10. Thank you. I mean, it's,
Exactly.
I think reducing AVRE and greater opportunities
Yeah.
seems fair, more fair. Again, closer to what, so. I don't know that I.
So the
have math
bathroom
left in.
rehabs were about the doors and being not handicap accessible at
yeah, I think they're making them ADA compliant.
ACA, bringing them to ADA compliance.
And these are different from the
Deborah has
bathroom
it.
renovations they had before. Oh, the pictures, yeah.
Yeah, pictures and all. Thank you, Deborah, for reminding us.
Actually,
There you go.
So that one,
American Civic Association presentation, I was so surprised that that whole building hadn't been totally redone. Do you remember that conversation?
Yep.
I
Yeah,
don't think it was here.
They only fixed tiles where bullet holes were and they didn't upgrade everything after the, yeah.
so that 126 9. I mean, cut in half is 63,450. Do we reduce accordingly? Like AVRE?
You talking about like taking 60,000 off from AVRE and greater ops? Do that real quickly just before doing the math.
Obviously, that impacts greater ops more.
It's still $6,900.
Still about 7,000 over. And that was, I just did 60,000 off to make the math easier.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
I mean,
Maybe
maybe,
make that-
we-
Sorry. I was
Oh.
just gonna suggest maybe make that 115 and even 1,000 and see where that leads us.
100,000?
Yes.
Deb had a question.
Steve, with it, projects with the ACA, that was an ADA compliance. Does that get a pass? And is that have to be considered as the pool of money, or is that outside of it? Cause specifically ADA.
So the capital, none of the capital money is capped or in any kind of pool. This is just whatever you have left. The thing with the ADA compliance is it makes it easier for record keeping purposes. So it's CDBG eligible just on that nature alone, the fact that it's ADA compliant. But there's no real pool that you're working with. This is essentially all the money you have left. In CDBG anyway. But you guys have already done a home and ESG, so I guess it doesn't matter.
Would that be unless we scale back blight removal? If rather than 5, we do 4, 7.
Oh, yeah, yeah. If you
something
take
like that,
back blight
we-
removal,
we-
you'd have
we-
another.
We could, you know, maybe do a little bit more for greater opportunities and not give them such a big hit.
Well, we've got 8099 that we can add to. We've got $8,000 to work with on the bottom here, so we could put that into Greater Broome. Can you add that in, Steve?
What? Hold on, let me.
What would she say? I didn't catch that.
The mayor said as close to 5 as possible. How firm was he there?
I wrote 350 plus. She wrote 5. He did say as much as he can give it.
Okay, I mean,
Because it was 300 before, and I said, what are we talking, 350,000? And he says, or
I hear wiggle room. But I mean, we could do 450 there and spread the love.
Well, we have to take away from another location. So you want to say,
Blight to 450.
way easier that way. And then you're saying take CDBG or blight down 50? I bet.
I think so.
I think so.
Does that call for more cake?
Yeah, you were finished before. As soon as you spent that last dollar, well, I mean, you're not finished, but it balances. Now it's all about tweaking.
Thumbs up. Thumbs up, thumbs up. Do we want to tweak? Is there tweaking that we want to do? Is there anywhere? We did have that line that we CERN. What screen was that on?
Oh, is it the CDBG TTLP or is it the ESG TTLP? That you have a concern. CDAC has further concerns about TTLP for more or for less.
That was our one where we wanted to send a message, but there's concerns that we were spending too harsh of a message. We can't take that out of demolition, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have to be within. Yeah.
I imagine them with their $22 million having a very similar meeting here as we're doing and with a very larger pot. You know, and if they want it funded, they can make it happen much easier than we can.
Okay. We like it. So we have no tweaking we want to do. I know we have 2 people who are concerned about it. Okay. So any
Justin,
tweak?
I'll be your lone holdout on that because I vehemently disagree on that, but for the sake of
What kind of number are you thinking, Deborah?
not where we're at, but where do we go from what we're given?
Yeah, I don't know where we go.
The, for me, that's just such a special population.
I just don't know where to pull that money from without it.
Therefore, my suggestion is I will be the opposing vote on this
Okay.
to make the point that should not be that number.
Okay. I don't know if I signed that. Actually. The attendance sheet, I'm not, did everyone sign the attendance sheet? No, me neither. Okay.
Are you modifying?
No,
So I think just,
we don't, do we have to be unanimous? No, we're just majority, right?
You want to do separate grant approvals of home ESG and CDBG?
Sure.
Make things a little bit simpler. All right, we're gonna jump to home grants recommendation. I'm gonna need to borrow your pen because you're using mine. No, you're fine. Home grant. Recommendation for the budget, 68,000 for housing admin, 95,000 for refab projects, 517,000 for the Chota set aside. People taking my pens.
Do you need it?
Home grant. Budget with Choto set aside caveat, which will need to be explained by the chair when he explains this to city council.
Yay.
So that's the current home budget
Give me a good note on
recommendation.
that one, Rebecca.
you have the typo.
Oh, thank you.
I know.
So-
It's not affirmatively. Wait, hold on. You gotta do Justin's gotta do it.
All in favor? Aye.
Wait, was there a first and a second?
Oh, whoops.
Okay, I'll make a
Motion.
make a motion to approve.
Second, Rebecca.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye.
Any opposed or abstained?
Are you-
Opposed or abstained?
Opposed with notation needed.
Okay, so I'll do
This
10,
is for the
0.
home,
For the home, this is for home.
just for this segment.
The home grant. Not the ESG, not TTLP.
Okay. I apologize. I just can't see.
Okay. Did you want to vote a yes or no on this one?
I'm lost right now, Steve.
Okay.
This is the vote on fiscal year 50 budget for housing administration, rehab projects,
Gotcha.
Choto set aside. As a vote in the affirmative.
Words, I will change my vote to affirmative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's a unanimous vote.
Okay.
And one abstention or no abstentions? No
Let's-
abstentions. Okay.
All right, we'll go to the ESG. This is the summary, but it's based off of this over here. 27,740 for, sorry. 27,740 for the Addiction Center of Broome, 1543 for Catholic Charities TTLP, 12,060 for Outreach Ministries, 10,400 for Volunteers of America, 11,960 for the WISE Regular Emergency Housing Program, 17,897 for the WISE Southside Manor Shelter, 15,600 for the WISE Street Outreach Program, 1,720 for the City of Binghamton HMIS fees, and 63,080 for Family Enrichment Network's Homelessness Prevention Program.
I'll make the motion to approve.
So we have John with the motion. Who do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a second. All in favor? Is it a no? No?
But you can also abstain, or you can say no. It's up to you.
I mean, it won't, yeah, I'm gonna say no.
You're
No.
saying no?
No and no. We have two no's. You're good. Okay. Everyone else is good? All right.
I'm
and
abstaining.
you're
Abstaining.
That's 8, 1, 2. I still have 8. Wait, who's A's? Because we're getting really close to it not being eligible. Okay, 8. All right, so it does pass.
Okay.
8, 1, 2. There was a special note. CDAC has further concerns. I think that will also cover the abstentions and the nays. So again, chair will have to bring this up when they're talking about
Yes.
it regarding TTLP. Okay. Now the
Excuse
big
me,
one.
City Councilwoman. Do you know what day I'm presenting?
Oh, I don't know, but I can find out for you.
Okay, thank you.
This won't be available because we missed today. You'd have to have it in today by today at noon to get on the Monday thing. So it'll be the meeting.
It'll be after, so it'll be probably the first week of May, I'm
Yeah, I
thinking.
think so.
Which is what it was last year.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
All right, CDBG, let's see, we'll do this first. All right. Salaries, 175,231.11 for admin and compliance. General planning activities, 29,103.19. The economic development salaries, $38,738.63. I think I'm far enough over. The housing salaries, non-home, $27,259.14. Code enforcement, $214,716.94. Home purchase assistance and repairs, $375,000. First Ward Action Council Senior Housing Repair Program, $85,000. Demolition / blight removal, $450,000. Binghamton Homeownership Academy, $20,000. Going to capital. $50,000 for the American Civic Association bathroom rehab, $100,000 for AVRE facade improvements, $40,566 for the Discovery Center of the Southern Tiers Pirate Ship Playground, $104,499.99 for greater opportunities for Broome and Shenango for their capital improvement project, $130,000 for the street rehab at Hayes, Conklin, and Webster, $20,000 for Achieve Summer Rec Program, $17,000 for Action for Older Persons Senior Health Insurance Counseling Program, $12,000 for BAE's Out of School Youth Program, $40,000 for Boys and Girls Club After Hours Program, $20,000 for Boys and Girls Club Teen Center, $26,125 for the B&G Club Summer Program Fee, $8,760 for Broome Urban League's Attain Lab, $20,000 for Urban League's After School and Summer Program, $15,000 for the CARES Backpack Program, $10,000 for City of Binghamton Park Rangers, $50,000 for Fairview Recovery Opioid Case Manager, $20,000 for Mother and Baby's Perinatal Network, Powell Family Resource Center, $20,000 for Safe Streets NOMA Community Center, $20,000 for Triple Cities Makerspace project, and $20,000 for Vines Grow Binghamton. That's the CDBG budget recommendation.
Do we have a motion to accept these recommendations?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do we have a second? Ebony seconds. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Is that you?
5,
Unanimous?
6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
11.
11.
11 unanimous.
Is that it?
Are we done? Motion to close?
Are you smiling? I don't know if that's it or not.
Motion to close?
Okay,
Motion to close?
hold on. Before we motion to adjourn, I need to do a final attendance, starting with Deborah up in the front.
Deborah Hogan, mayoral appointee.
Thank you.
Eileen Hughes, District 2.
John Brunza, mayoral appointee.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Rebecca Rathmel, third district appointee.
Kenya Middleton, City Council, Second District, and ex officio.
Ebony Hato, fourth district, secretary.
Mary Ann Callahan, mayoral appointee.
Michelle O'Loughlin, at-large appointee.
Carolyn Austin, sixth district.
Jordan Trice, fifth district.
Rebecca Porter, first district.
And Justin McGregor, president or chair, 7th district. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
Seconded. All in favor? Closed. Thank you.
Good night.
Don't forget to take some cake and pizza home and everything.